Good morning, everyone. This is Celeste, Carmichael, and we are here for another edition of Campus County Connection webinar series. And I'm here today with Mo Tidball, and we're going to talk about the Wild Harvest Table and a project that has received some federal capacity funds for extension and is really fully developed at this point and available for all of our extension systems. Welcome, Mo.
Thanks, Celeste. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share this program with everybody. And it's actually a great example of a local need that used Campus County Connections to really develop it into a research-based program for everyone to use. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
So as we get started, Mo, you're going to talk to us a little bit about the who Mo Tidball is, right? That's the fun part. That's the fun part of all these. I love hearing those stories.
So I am the nutrition educator for Seneca County Cornell Cooperative Extension, and Seneca County is in the heart of the Finger Lakes, which is a beautiful agricultural county. We have lots of natural resources, wildlife, deer, fishing, and as you can tell maybe by the picture on the left, I am a foodie. I love to cook, I love to eat fresh local foods, and I have my undergraduate in culinary arts, and then I actually went back and got my master's in nutrition to add the health aspect to my love of food. And my partner on this program is Dr. Keith Tidball from the Department of Natural Resources, and he is a conservation-minded outdoorsman, big hunter and fisherman, and for years brought me all the wild game and fish to play with and create recipes and make delicious. And so wild game and fish are always on our table being served. They're part of our celebrations. At Thanksgiving time, we have a big feast with all sorts of appetizers of wild game, and so it's very much part of our local food system. And I also wanted to mention, though, so we're talking about Campus County Connections, that yes, Keith is my husband, but you don't have to marry campus to make these Campus County connections. Of course, it was very helpful to be able to talk about all this stuff over dinner and over the table. But actually, back when the Wild Harvest Table was getting started, I did the program leadership development course with you guys, and this was my capstone project, so I was able to get lots of great feedback from colleagues then. And I've had dietetic interns and CALES interns helping me with this project. So I think if you're out there in the counties and you have a really interesting local need and local project or program, there's lots of ways to find campus connections, and there's probably people in various departments that would be interested in the program or the project and helping with it. So yeah, Keith is my husband and my partner on this, but you don't have to marry campus for the story.
It's a good part of this story, though.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, and we really kind of live it. There we are fishing and things like that. So who is the Wild Harvest Table for? It's really for CCE educators who might encounter families who are handed wild game and they don't know what to do with it, or people who are working with food pantry participants, and there's lots of venison that's donated to the food pantries through the Venison Donation Coalition, and maybe they don't know how to cook it or what to do with it. It's also for new hunters and anglers who harvest an animal and are like, oh, okay, now what? And just anecdotally, I know in Seneca County, our DEC hunter education courses fill up and are always on a waiting list, and it's primarily youth and females that are getting into hunting, and so that food aspect is an interesting piece to add into that. And lastly, it's for regular hunters and anglers who are looking for new things to do with the meat. And so why is it important? Well, wild fish and game is a healthy local food. You often hear that it's lean and nutritious, and that's why it's so lean that there's special ways to cook it to make it tasty and not tough. Getting the wild fish and game is great exercise, and also becoming a person who goes out and collects their food in the wild fish and game, it increases environmentally responsible behaviors and attitudes, and ultimately conservation. It's so nice to be out there in the morning and watching nature wake up and to be part of that. So it's really important.
And there's all kinds of research that backs that idea as well.
Exactly. Yeah, that it's therapeutic to be out there in nature, and so that's a really nice part of the whole ecology of actually hunting and fishing for your food.
Yeah, it's such a great. It fits in sustainability in so many ways.
Exactly. Yeah. So just briefly how we're going to go through this here this morning, and for people who maybe don't recognize where Seneca County is, I know I'm always like, So it's right here in the middle of the Finger Lakes, in between Seneca and Cuba Lake, and Ithaca is right down here at the bottom of Cuba Lake. Can people see my mouse to this, or not necessarily?
Here.
Okay.
And then to the pointer.
It's good.
The pointer.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And there you go.
Okay.
Now you can, if you click, they will see that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's Celeste Carmichael, but really that's Mo Tidball holding on the mouse.
Okay. So this is where our Seneca County Extension office is, and you can see this whole area here, and between the lakes is mostly Seneca County down to Ithaca here at the bottom. So I'm just going to go through a brief history of how the program got started, hopefully as an inspiration for people who have interesting projects out in their counties, and then talk about the research funding that came about and how that's influenced the program, and then we'll walk through the extension resources that are available for everybody to use.
Super.
Okay. So I started with Seneca County CCE back in, 2008. So it's almost 8 years now. And that was sort of when blogging was really getting big and things like that. So we were talking about, lots of, as I had mentioned before, that we eat a lot of wild game and fish at home. And there's lots of people who maybe have had a bad experience eating wild game or fish. They don't know how to prepare it because it is lean, so they've had tough meat or gamey tasting, or they just somehow are turned off by the idea of eating it, but
haven't had a positive experience.
Right.
Whether it's cooking it or eating it, to encourage them more.
Exactly. But then when they try it and it's delicious, they're like, oh wow, this is great. So really we wanted to create a resource for people to get recipes and information on how to prepare it and procure it so that it was safe, the food safety aspect of it, and nutritious and delicious, so that, if someone's out there getting the meat, that the family will then eat it and enjoy it. So it really started as a weblog or a blog back when people used Blogspot. And so that was pretty easy to maneuver for me as well. And so we started putting up recipes, and I started putting up information, and all of the recipes on there I've made and created, and I know that they're pretty easy to use and that they taste good, and that hopefully people won't have an issue with doing that. So that's how I got started as a web-based resource for people. And I was also the Eat Smart New York educator for the county. So all of the recipes that I had to use for programming needed to fit the Senate guidelines of a certain amount of fat and protein and things like that. So I was very used to using nutrition fact labels. I love this little pointer. So I took all the recipes that I had for wild game and fish and ran it through my nutrition software to be able to generate these labels.
Awesome.
Right.
So it's a special, you've told me this before, it's a special software that creates a label like that.
Correct. And so it's based on the USDA National Nutrient Database has all the nutrition information for various foods. We'll get to it doesn't have all the foods, but that's how the nutrition fact labels are generated. So there's software companies that are based on that.
That's very cool.
And create these labels. So I did notice as I was creating the nutrition fact labels that a lot of species of game and fish were missing. There just was not nutrition information in the USDA database, and therefore not in my nutrition software. I thought that was kind of interesting because, every new flavor of chips or candy have to be in there because the manufacturers have to put nutrition fact labels on there. but Mr. Ruffed Grouse running around doesn't have to say what his nutrition facts are or things like that. So so that was starting to pique my interest of like, wow, that's crazy that there's, Canada goose. There's tons of them out there. Lots of people hunt them, but there's no nutrition information on them.
And you were able to do something about that. That's
that is the coolest part. But this was it was nagging at me that this was the case, because for species that I could find the nutrition facts on and compare, such as wild duck is in there versus domestic duck, and I saw that the wild duck had half the amount of fat and had more minerals in some instances. So I could say, wow, wild duck is a healthier lean meat. And for other species, I didn't have those nutrition facts. So I thought that was interesting, and of course I would chat with Keith about that too. And so some research questions started to emerge over our kitchen table. Another thing was, what are some of the motivations and barriers to utilizing wild game and fish, especially in food insecure families? I know in rural Seneca County, for some families, getting a deer is their protein for the winter and really important, whereas other families, it could be really important, but their family won't eat it because they haven't had a good experience with it. So we're looking at some of those things. And then, of course, lack of wild fish and game information in the database, in the USDA database. And, Keith, as someone in the Department of Natural Resources, was also looking at, here I'm a local foodie, I like to eat local foods, and was suddenly interested, well, maybe I should learn how to hunt and fish, and came into that from the food perspective. And in talking to people, there was even vegetarians who would talk to, were like, oh, I don't eat meat because of the ethics of it, but I would eat wild caught meat, wild game meat. Somehow that seemed more sustainable to them, or it seemed more acceptable to them as a form of meat. So we're kind of looking at, well, maybe this sort of the locavore movement was coming on. I think that term was coined in 2007. So are there potentially more people out there that would begin hunting and fishing, or stay as hunters and fishermen, which ultimately contributes to conservation efforts? So from the Department of Natural Resources, that was an interesting question to them. Is there the possibility to recruit and retain new hunters because of the food aspects of it? And so those sorts of things were sort of coming up as we were working on resources for wild game and fish. So, and here's sort of the locavore hunting connection. There was all these books coming out too in terms of hunting for food, and magazine and gray literature type things like Hipsters Who Hunt and stuff in the New York Times. So we're like, maybe there really is something to this. And The Omnivore's Dilemma, which was sort of a famous book, talked about that as well. So with the help of Dr. Paul Curtis in the Department of Natural Resources, we applied for Smith, Lever, and Hatch funding. And Artie Gillespie from the Department of Nutritional Sciences is for that too, looking at family decision-making processes around wild fish and game. And we were able to do some research and also increase the viability and the benefits of the program as well. So that was 3-year funding. And so in the beginning, we were going to look at, and I'm just going to kind of go through this somewhat quick, but I think it's important to show sort of it's a research-based program, yay.
Yeah, right, absolutely. And one of the reasons that we try to feature some of these programs on the Campus County Connection is that, there is opportunity out there for counties that are interested. I mean, so, Mo explains this, some of this happened across the dinner table. That doesn't have to be the mechanism. She had questions, irritations, right?
Right,
things
exactly.
that were really bothering you. And you started talking to somebody, who happens to be in a department, right? So that opportunity is there for other extension educators too. So across the program work teams, or talking to the department extension leader. If you didn't know that, there's a department extension leader in every department within Cal and CHE. So figuring out who they are and just explaining, sharing those needs that you're seeing within a community can lead to something like a project like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and and you'll go on to talk a little bit about the angle or the steps that you took within the project to make it a local, right? So the data that you were collecting, a lot of it was local data. So go ahead. I don't mean to
No,
thunder. I just think it's very cool.
It is, and I do want to encourage, again, you don't have to marry campus for this to happen. You just need to find the people that are interested in the same type of program and things as well. And I know talking to colleagues in the Department of Nutritional Sciences, they thought that the whole missing nutrient data was amazing as well, and really cool that we were able to go out and do something about that. So in the beginning, we just wanted to find out, from different stakeholder groups, some of the attitudes and barriers and motivations for consuming wild fish and game. And then we also outlined that we would collect 3 species of wildlife that were missing from the National Nutrient Database and collect those to have them added into the database. And we did that for ruffed grouse, which some people call it road chicken or prairie chicken, and it's a white meat, kind of like chicken, but of course there's no nutritional fat on it, so we don't know if it had the same nutritional spectrum as chicken. The other thing was Canada goose. I'm sure right now it's fall time and everybody's seeing flocks and flocks and flocks of geese going overhead, and we wanted to know if that Canada goose had a different nutrition profile compared to domesticated goose, which it does. And brook trout, which is our New York State fish, and has made a great comeback up in the Adirondacks in terms of fishable fish. It took a hit back with acid rain, I think. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but it is our native fish, and it has beautiful orangey pink flesh like salmon and tastes really great, and we wanted to know what the nutrition profile was for that.
So what determines what has the records for the nutritional value? Do you know that? I mean, does that come out? Because deer was
on there, and so I have colleagues in that department at USDA, and I asked them about the deer meat, and actually we probably will do a deer study because it was farm raised deer. Access deer. So
so it may have gotten on their list because it was a commercial product,
right? And then there's lots of wild game in there from a study that someone at USDA did with native peoples in Alaska. So there's lots of wild caribou.
So there was a reason, or something,
right?
Something that made that happen.
Exactly. There are things like squirrel is in there and wild duck is in there. So I'm not sure what. That's an interesting question. I'll have to ask. I actually have a chat with them next week about wild turkey that we're working on right now. As a separate project to the Smith-Lever Hatch Funds. Actually, New York State DEC was interested in this work and funding for wild turkey could be put in. So, it is curious. There's certainly things. Actually, I was trying to find some nutrition information on turtle. And turtle used to be a very popular thing, and I think in the South, turtle soup and things like that. And the only turtle they have listed is endangered green turtle. Like, why would you have the nutrition information for that? But I guess it is. But back in the day, I guess that was what the turtle soup was made out of, and so they had the nutrition facts for it. But now no one's allowed to eat it anymore. So, and that brings up a good point too in terms of conservation and how much of the wild game of fish to eat. In terms of sustainability and things like that. I mean, obviously, we're not promoting to go out and, fill your freezer with brook trout. There are limits of how much you can catch, and all of that's regulated through the state departments of environmental conservation. And our final phase of the research would be to take all this information and then do a large survey with the Department of Natural Resources has a Human Dimension Resource Unit, and they're used to doing large surveys for DEC about wild game and fish, and so we contracted with them to do our final survey to examine the locavore perceptions and consumption of wild game meat and their ideas on hunting and fishing and how we might use programming to help offset that or with what we found. So, you know, what is a locavore? It's a person motivated to eat food that is grown, raised, produced, or harvested locally. And, you know, you can see lots of different demographics and
interesting pictures.
Oh. Yeah. So we've since learned that, like, the millennials and things don't like to be labeled as locavores, so I'm starting to refer more to local foodies and things like that. But locavore was the term back in 2007, and so that's what we went with. So it's a hard population to try to suss out and reach. So we ended up, there's a series of magazines, the Edible series, and there's an Edible Finger Lakes for this region. There's an Edible Hudson Valley, New York, and all sorts of ones. But in order to make sure we're sort of reaching people who consume local food, that's the population we went with. And so we found that indeed almost 100% of them were motivated to eat local food. So we were right on that. But if you go down and look here, our population was 70% female, middle-aged, well-educated, well-off. So we were kind of missing the subsets of the local food thing that we were looking for as well. But at least we know they were motivated to eat locally. Maybe not the people who are going to, you know, pick up a rifle and go to the range and learn how to hunt and shoot, but we were going to find out. So this is just to show we were on the target, but we weren't quite in the bullseye with the finding the locavores we wanted to reach. But what we did find, and keep in mind who our population was for the survey, that many had fished as children and still fish in the last 12 months. We also found that they're interested in fishing-related topics, that conservation and preparing wild-caught fish were high, and processing wild-caught fish and even catching wild fish was almost 50%. So there was an interest in fishing. Factors that would affect fish consumption for people: quality and freshness, taste was very important, connection to local sources, again, the conservation, which is great, and the nutritional benefits, and all of these things fit in nicely with the Wild Harvest Table program. We found that, not clicking nicely, there we go, that the barriers to fish consumption were concern about environmental quality where the fish was caught. I think everybody's heard of potential pollutants. I know in like Lake Ontario, you're supposed to just eat fish once a month caught there. And the Department of Health puts out a really nice booklet that has the river and stream and water qualities and how much fish you can catch from there. So that's a very teachable thing, is my point with the environmental quality. And that fits right in with the quality, safety, and personal health. Again, it's very teachable. Time required to catch and prepare fish, there's not much we could do to help them with that. But you'll see in the darker pink, all these, you know, lacking skills are things that we can help with extension programming.
So I don't know the answer to this, but can somebody purchase wild game and fish? Is that even a thing?
That is a great question. So wild game and fish belong to all the people of the state, and that's, you know, you get your permit and you go out and you're able to hunt or fish, your license. So to deter market hunting and exploitation of the resources, you're not allowed to sell it. So you can't go buy wild-caught venison.
So that's why you don't have it on the menu at a restaurant,
right? Right. Anything.
Should be exposure to what it tastes like when it's well done.
Right. That's true. You know, they do have farm. So if you do see venison on at a restaurant, it's farm-raised venison.
Okay.
And there are some exceptions with fish. I think there are some fisheries where it can be caught and sold to the restaurant. I think Lake Champlain might be one of those. But and another question that comes up then, therefore, is can you actually serve these things in extension settings? And according to the Department of Environmental Conservation, as long as you're not selling it, it's fine to cook it and share it with whomever. So that part is fine from the Department of Environmental Conservation's aspect. It's local health department that might have other ideas in terms of.
And I know we've talked about that before. So suggestion for educators who may be listening and want to do something like, you know, preparing and sharing. What would their mode of operation?
So I would suggest talking to your local health department and let them know that, you know, it's sometimes, I know from my health department, we sort of have a blanket health certificate for all the programming we do. You know, whether we're teaching people how to cook vegetables at the farmer's market, we're covered for those taste samples, and so we're also covered for teaching people how to cook their fish and taste that.
So they should check in with their local health department.
Correct. And, you know, go well prepared for that conversation, because, you know, sometimes they're like, well, we can't track if it's safe and this or that, and then just let them know that, you know, it's all very fresh and food safety has been taken into account.
Back to your project might help.
Right.
Sure,
exactly. So they're all about the food safety part, and that's part of this programming as well, as we want to teach people. I'm sure the health department wouldn't want people to go out and get sick from wild game because they had never learned how to safely do it. So if we remind them that we're teaching people how to safely do it, and that taste sampling is an important part of that, it might help. So then moving on to the hunting aspect. Okay, so we found that, you know, there was less people who have hunted, obviously, and there's quite a few who would just like, no, not doing that. So again, though, the barriers were lacking the skills, and that's something that we can teach. And there's other factors, though, that we just couldn't really get into with our programming. Okay. But they are interested in the conservation and the preparing and the processing and handling. So we found with our population that they were definitely interested in consuming wild game and fish. Taste and quality and all these things and conservation were very important. And we also found that there's probably room for extension to be a more visible source for wild fish and game, and being online is a great way to do that. And so I need to move along. And the nutrition research, we had that added to the National Nutrient Database, so that's out there now. So for the extension side of things, and we received a Program Excellence through Research Award from the National Extension Family Consumer Sciences. That's very cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So there's been lots of workshops that we've created, Panfish to Plate. This picture over here is, that's Paul Curtis showing kids how to fillet fish at a fishing day that the local conservation club does in Seneca County. 250 kids were there, and they received fishing poles, and we taught them how to fillet their fish and cook their fish. And it was great to see so many kids just really enjoying fish and coming up for more. We do Venison 101 canning and jerky workshops. We incorporate a lot of the wild game and fish information into 4-H shooting sports, and I've created booklets for that, which I'll show you here in a minute. youth hunts and also working down here. This is actually coming up next week too. These are a bunch of Purple Heart recipients that come to the Finger Lakes to do outdoor recreation through hunting and fishing. And so I show them how to clean their birds and cook their birds, and it's really a lot of fun. And they're doing it again for that sort of therapeutic outdoor recreation part, but to put the food into it is really great.
So Mo, are there like curriculum or itineraries or any of the details that somebody might need to put on a workshop similar to these things?
Yes, so I have some of that on the website, which I'm going to go through, and I am always available to chat with people if they're setting something up. Actually, we just talked about in our Finger Lakes SBN maybe coming up with a Train the Trainer Day. And so I'll be looking to put that together where I can just lay out a lot of these workshops and the pieces for everybody in our SBN. And of course, anybody who wants to come visit the Finger Lakes is welcome to come to that Train the Trainer event. Yeah. This is just a picture of the Panfish to Plate workshop, and it's just, again, we go through the DOH health advisory things and go through from the stream to the plate. A great family activity too. And just, you get great exposure for CCE through the media through this program as well. You know, if you do a venison workshop in your county, invite the media to come. We also have our Wild Harvest Table logo on the New York State DEC hunting regs and in their booklets on their website. You know, like us on Facebook, add Wild Harvest Table to your website. There's resources out there for all of Extension to use. I've done lots of radio interviews, especially in the fall around hunting season. So it's just a great way to bring exposure for Cornell Cooperative Extension, potentially with maybe a new audience in your county of people who hunt and fish and are interested in that. It's also a great way to do cross-programming. So I do a lot of work with 4-H. I know in our agricultural county, a lot of farmers actually hunt and fish as well. And so it's a great way to do cross-programming and to really keep CCE front and center in your county and things like that. So that this is a resource for you to revitalize and all that. So the Wild Harvest Table website is where all the recipes live and the information. Let's go ahead and take a look there. So,
Wild Harvest
Table.
I'm just going to Google that and look at, there it is, so I can remember that that's a good way to get there. Okay, and we click on home. There you are.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so I've got a great new camera too, and I'm taking fun pictures.
Wow,
so that's kind of fun.
Does that generate your house?
It is. It is.
My goodness.
So
delicious.
So here's a recipe, and there's photos of the different steps, and it goes down and has a lovely nutrition fact label.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Thank you. So if you go to In the News, you can find some of the radio interviews and things that I spoke of. There's also, this is the, oh, I got to use a little clicker. Wow. This is the, oh, you can see the mouse and this. Okay. This has the information from that large survey, so it was written up into a white paper and lives there. Other media things, and you will definitely get some great media coverage doing this type of stuff. And this is information about the missing nutrition data information. So those are there for you to check out. And then the educator resources. So you can, if you're doing something with 4-H, you can either print or read these. I actually have a DEC hunting hunter safety instructor who hands these out at the end of his class because he wants to be sure that the kids, once they're out and actually harvest something, know what to do with it, which is great. So it has the nutrition information, it has some information on field dressing, it also has some great things that you could do with the whole animal, furs and feather, and then the recipes. And then at the end talks a little bit about, you know, you've taken the time to go out and hunt, so set a nice table, make it beautiful, sit down and really enjoy your meal with your family. Nice. So those are there. Let's see. Right here. And we have one for shotgun, which covers, which is one of the 4-H shooting sports disciplines, and that covers small game and wild fowl. Rifle is mostly a venison booklet. And living history muzzleloader covers the canning and making jerky. So that's kind of fun. And then I talked about this group of veterans who come out and hunt and fish, and there's booklets for them as well. And then there's also outreach postcards. So if you are going to do some workshops, you can print these out, and the front page has...
I believe those were at the 4-H Educators training recently.
Yeah, you have suggested that I reach out to them, and I did.
Yeah.
So,
I saw them there.
Yay, yay. And so venison meatballs, everybody loves meatballs, and this is a great recipe. So this is there, and you can kind of use that to promote any programming you might be doing with the wild game. And then there's also a curriculum for doing a meat canning workshop, which a lot of people enjoy. And again, you could use that for canning beef, or you can canning venison. So if you are doing food preservation in the county, that's a great curriculum that's there for you.
Fantastic.
And I am happy for anyone to reach out and contact me if they want to get more involved with the program. It'd be great.
All right. So and with that, I think if we go back to our slides, I believe your email address is right there.
Excellent. Okay.
So Mo, thank you so much, and thanks for anybody that's out there listening or watching this. Again, this is part of the Campus County Connection webinar series. They are roughly once a month, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on schedules, but you can keep in touch with what's going on by just checking the staff site every once in a while, staff.cce.cornell.edu, and they are all listed on the front page or on the Campus County Connections web page. Thanks so much. Thanks again, Mo.
Thank you.